Let's do baby first of all, because that is very exciting. How long have you got to go?
Well, probably about a week or so,
Oh wow.
potentially. But then who knows now? We're into that zone where it's we know that things could happen anytime, which is really exciting. I actually spent the weekend blowing up a birth pool and practicing filling that up, which actually led to a very wet floor in the house. So I'm glad I did have a practice run.
An
But
extremely
yeah, I think
irate neighbour downstairs, no doubt, as well.
I think we're lucky we've got some really nice neighbours, and I think we're going to need them over the next couple of weeks. But I think I'm sort of planning what it's going to be like to have a very rapid drive back from Loughborough at some point in the next couple of weeks, because we're up in camp the next 2 weeks, so Monday to Thursday. So I'll see what that speedy drive back down south looks like when I get the phone call.
That's good news.
I've had to give Flo, my wife, numbers of everyone in all the management and everything, because obviously if we're training, it's no good if she's trying to ring through and it's 2 hours until anyone gets back to her. So yeah,
she could have quite a lot of fun with that. She could, if she wanted to, just get the upper hand on this situation quite quickly. I don't know how she was. Where are you? If this on the left is pure excitement and this is like, holy Moses, life's going to change beyond all recognition, where are you on that sort of sliding scale?
oh, I'm occupying every single point along that scale at various times. Mostly towards the excitement bit. I think every time I feel excited about it, though, I catch myself and think, no, don't get too excited. This is going to be really hard and really challenging. So, but I think it's nice to hold both. But yeah, I'm excited. It's definitely along that scale. We feel very very fortunate, and a lot of it. Also, what I always come back to keep it light for myself is there's a lot of guys in the squad who I never thought would be able to look after themselves, let alone children, and they've done a wonderful job. So I figure if they can do it, then I can do it.
Let's hope for us all. Yeah, no, it's very exciting. Do you know what make you're getting? I can't remember if I asked you that the other day.
No, we don't know. We'll find out. We'll get a surprise on the day. So yeah.
Very exciting. So let's talk rugby as well then. Where I mean, what a how long would you say? 18 months, 2 years? What would you put on a time frame of what an extraordinary period it's been?
Well, we've been talking about what year it's been really, because everything over the last year puts everything before that in sort of pales into comparison. But I mean, it's almost exactly, well, it was a couple of weeks ago. It was all the photos were popping up from Vancouver last year, which was the last World Series tournament. And it was amazing how quickly that time had gone in some ways when you think, oh, that was a year ago. But then how much has changed, the kind of turbulent time that we've been through in that 12-month period was really brought home. And yeah, it has been. I was speaking to Jamie Findale, one of the Scottish lads, the other day, and we were just reflecting on how we are sort of, a lot of us are very different people than what we were this time last year. And this time last year, our thoughts and everything going around heading into the Olympic Games and what it meant to us then versus what it means to us now are very different.
Can you elaborate on that? In what way?
Yeah. So I think the general thing is probably the perspective that people have got on it now. And it's difficult to talk about the perspective without sounding like it matters less. And that's not what it is. But if anything, it probably, if it can, matter more now than it did before than it does, because it was stripped away from us. Just being able to play the game was stripped away from us. So actually just being involved becomes such a valuable thing for us. Just being out on the training field, just being able to be in a squad, be part of something becomes a big thing. But the Olympics in itself holds a bit of a different space. I mean, I'm at risk of talking on behalf of the whole squad here. Everyone else might be totally different place right now. But for me, anyway, it's a very intense thing in Olympic Games in a lot of ways, because it's probably the best thing we'll ever do in our careers and one of the best things we'll ever do in our lives. And that's true of Rio, to be honest. And to hold that thought can be quite tricky, and the intensity of it can be quite full on psychologically as well. And I feel like some of that has been taken away because we see it for what it is, perhaps more in the context of the wider world, in the context of actually just being able to play being such a valuable thing, all the big stuff becomes very much a beautiful kind of bonus in some ways. Now it's easy for me I'm saying that now, like when we're sat here having a nice chat and I'm very relaxed. When we're in the middle of a training session that's not going well and I'm losing my head and I'm thinking ahead towards, Olympic Games and how this is not good enough and we need to make stuff right. People probably don't think I seem so relaxed then, but yeah, I don't know if that explains it at all.
I presume at one stage you just your Olympic dream went up in smoke. I just wonder how close you were to thinking, actually, I've got to go and find other things to do, or whether you were always confident that the ship would come back round again.
It's funny you use the ship analogy, actually, because in that period last year around kind of, I don't know when the Olympics was cancelled, I can't remember, but when certainly we probably had an inkling it was going to be postponed or cancelled anyway before it was officially done. And yeah, 100%. And I wrote an article about this exact thing, about trying to find a new career. And the metaphor I used was kind of being adrift at sea. And yeah, 100%. That is, I considered that. I was thinking, well, maybe this is the universe telling me to park it and move on to something else. Because realistically, there was a lot of guys in our group, certainly with England, who were towards the end of the scale and age-wise, thinking about whether this was it. It's a nice way to go out, right? Like an Olympic Games is a nice way to kind of park things on your career and move on to pastures new. But so I was thinking about it. And then you think about, well, physically, what place will I be in another year? And, have not being supported perhaps in that year. And how does that play into it? And there was a lot of unknowns. So I really took a couple of months chill, and there was a temptation to furiously try and find rugby alternatives. And
did you have a good look about? Did you have a good scoop?
Sort of. I mean, the main thing that was driving me though was my ego, just to show people that I could do it, and get a club and deliver on a different stage, which was, is what drives a lot of us a lot of the time. But it wasn't particularly useful at that moment, I don't think. So I had a bit of a look around, and in all honesty, it's a bit of a tough market for sevens guys getting into 15s clubs, and particularly probably for older boys. Like Nort's had a short stint at Irish, but other than that, a lot of the guys didn't get anything in those early days, and most recently Rich de Carpentier at Queen's.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the senior boys, I think, unless I'm missing anyone off. But like I would have had to probably have done a fair bit of ringing around and selling myself to get a decent deal somewhere. And I just didn't really feel like that was the right thing for me at that point. And I'm really glad on reflection that I didn't try and chase that, because it gave me some good space from the game. I had a bit of a rest. Like I spent a good number of months not running into anyone or having anyone run into me, which is nice. And that, in fact, having a break from that makes you consider whether you want to carry on in the game.
Why in God's name have I been doing this in the first place, kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. You're like, well, this is not, this is how I would feel. And this is how a lot of people wake up day to day. This is kind of nice. That's gone out the window now. We're back in and we've done 3 weeks and returned to contact with GB. The old feelings have returned, which is strangely familiar and comforting, actually. But yeah, so yeah, it was a period last year where I did look around and think, what else was I going to do? And I think it will serve me well when I do decide to hang up the boots.
Yeah, I bet it will. I bet it's a very good kind of reference point that you can use moving forwards. I want to talk obviously Rio, etc., but just sort of, I suppose, how it's all come back together. I mean, how did you find out the band was getting back together, as it were? Was it euphoric sort of WhatsApping, or was there a formal letter through the post? How did the reunion begin?
I guess it was a lot more gradual than that, which we'll have to dress it up very differently when they make the Hollywood movie of it.
Because you'd done a lot of the hard work yourself, hadn't you? Was there a lot of? I'm just sort of remembering this as we get, but you'd gone looking for sponsorship as a group. Is that right?
Yeah, we've been pretty active as a player group, particularly as the England group, but we've spoken to the Welsh and the Scottish guys as well. But when we got made redundant last summer, there was this reluctance to just let things lie, because we knew a lot of the guys, their dream was to be in the Olympics, to play in the Olympics and to win medals. So people weren't willing to just sit by the wayside and let someone else work it out. And actually, it was incredibly powerful. People were just coming together, giving up their own time because everyone was having to earn and do the, normal life alongside it. So people were reaching out to contacts, trying to find investment. We were putting together sales decks. We got social media up and running for England Sevens, which is still going, which was off the, from scratch. And we put together some footage to put out as part of the pitch. And so it was a really kind of strong, powerful move towards getting something done. And ultimately that wasn't the direct solution, and that's not the reason we're where we are now necessarily, but I'm pretty confident that it didn't do us any harm, and that a lot of that work and effort played into where we've got to now. But the way it kind of came around, I was on a lot of the kind of behind the scenes conversations along with Phil Burgess, with the decision makers, the people who actually carry the power in this game, because it's not the players.
Are we talking glass corner offices at TW1?
Yeah. Who obviously, wanted to try and find a solution to what was a pretty challenging time. And as you say, the whole of rugby was hit at this point. So part of the challenge was, or part of what it felt like the challenge was to try and get sevens up the priority list, because it's pretty difficult to push when there were no tournaments. There was no obvious future. The Olympics was in the balance. So actually trying to get people to consider it as being something they needed to action and to sort out, felt like part of the challenge. But being on those calls meant that I probably knew the direction things were heading in a little bit before a lot of other people, which was probably more frustrating than any benefit, to be honest. But I learned a lot about the way things work and the way that sort of things get sorted or not. And the way finances work and the commercial side of things. So when it finally came around, sorry, it's a very long-winded way of getting to the point.
No, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, we got to the point. There was a call before Christmas on Zoom, obviously, and if I can't remember the order of things, but I think we had a group call with all of the England squad from last season. So anyone who was sort of in contention previously. And they explained that there was going to be a GB program funded by the National Lottery, and Tony Rokes was going to be the coach. And that was it. And everyone was like, oh, okay, here we go. We're on. And then there was a bit of a strange 2 weeks where we didn't really hear anything. And everyone was waiting for am I in? Because that was the wider list. No one knew actually who was going to be in this GB squad now. So there was a nervous wait for phone calls, I think, for a lot of people, and some people made it, some people didn't. That was another tough time, just to put the cherry on the top of a pretty terrible tasting cake for the year. Some people didn't make the final cut, and that was a tough one after they put effort into trying to secure a program as well. It's hard not to see everyone involved, but I guess to some extent that's sport. That's the nature of it.
Yeah. Geez, I tell you what, when you talk about the Hollywood film, if you do what I know you want to do, it'll be a hell of a story. What's sort of on the whiteboard at training now? How do you motivate yourselves? Are you painting yourselves as the underdogs who've got it all to do, or is it as elite as you wanted it to be? Where are you sort of pitching yourselves in the narrative around going for gold?
I think that your media mind's probably running away with it a bit more than we have as a group. But
I'll start scripting. I'll send you something by the end of the day.
Well, it'd be interesting because to some extent that narrative won't be dictated by us, as in the story people read will be whatever the story is told. But internally, we've spent a lot of time at the start of this program talking about what's important to us, our values, how that translates into certain behaviors. And look, there's going to be a huge amount of learning around that area because I've never played with some of these boys, and I don't even really know some of them. So that's the number one step on the ladder, is to actually understand what makes each other tick on and off the field, understand what's important to one another. And actually, there have been some brilliant moments of honesty in these first couple of weeks. And we got ahead of the game actually before we were in a physical camp training. We were on Zoom calls twice a week, which coincided with my NCT courses. So I was already had a black mark against my name for the wife on that one.
You don't want to get the two muddled up and start sort of rolling around on the floor in your Team GB meeting.
Yeah, I managed to get those just about right. But yeah, we spent a lot of time on that, and that's something we'll continue to build, because ultimately that has to be the root of anything. I mean, we can, dress ourselves up as being the underdogs, or actually being, having a massive advantage because we have three strong nations coming together, and there's loads of different elements into it. But the real stuff is, why do you play the game? What's important to you? Who do you love in your life that is important? What else do you like doing? And all that stuff, which it sounds really straightforward and really simple, but actually when you're not allowed to spend that much time in the day together and you can't go for a coffee with the boys, you have to really consider how you're going to get those conversations in.
Yeah, I am listening. I just got this vision of mothers in southwest London about to give birth, but incredible on the drifter fence, because they've been moving in to they're running through brick walls. They're ready to take on the world.
I'm just furiously screen sharing some analysis while all they're trying to do is put nappies on dolls.
I love it. Are you listening to me? I'm glad to hear it's all coming together. Well, I mean, do you set goals, or do you see how it goes? I mean, obviously you're setting goals, but how realistic is, I suppose, the dream relative to the challenges that you faced? Or is this excuses from this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal, I always think it's pretty obvious. The goal is, when you're talking about an Olympic Games, like, there's only one goal, I think, isn't there? I kind of like, isn't there? But I mean, that sounds a bit flippant, but it's not something it's something you have to talk about, because it can be really motivating or really overwhelming when you're talking about gold medals. But so that's part of it. But there's also a bigger picture for us. The Olympics is the thing, and medals are the thing, and there's always going to be a bit of that in you as an athlete, as a professional player, or just any player, anyone who's hungry to win. But there's something bigger in the context of the last year, which is around the game of sevens, and the game of sevens in this country, in Britain, because you talked about how rugby's been a difficult place and how that's been particularly hard for sevens, and I said about it's trying to get up the pecking order, but that's not a new challenge. Getting sevens to be recognised for a brilliant game, to try and drive the commercial side of it, to try and expose the game to more, to a greater viewership, to get more people playing the game in this country. Like, that's been the challenge for a long, long time, and continues to be so. And what can we do in these next 6 months or so to drive that, and actually put sevens in a place where it demands to be recognized, demands to be driven, because there's a huge amount of growth. We talk about it all the time. The potential growth in it is huge, and how can we play our part in that? And I think that's as much of a thing for us as the Olympics and the medal, and obviously the two go nicely hand in hand.
Obviously, having been there and done it before, your experience for this Team GB outfit is going to be unbelievably valuable. Just reflecting on Rio now, I mean, does it feel as colourful and vibrant and sort of out of control now as it did in the moment? How do you reflect on what was just an extraordinary few weeks?
Probably more out of control and more extraordinary, because again, everything becomes, I think, particularly the world we live in now, everything becomes a point of comparison, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And when we're looking ahead at what Tokyo might look like, which will be pretty strict and pretty stringent, would have been anyway, but certainly this year. And Rio was just crazy. It was nuts. Like, there was no, looking back, it really wasn't very strict or like regulated from what it could have been. And that was the official Olympic stuff. And then when you start talking about what we were up to after the games, where it was basically free reign, do what you want. You still got your accreditation, so you can access all areas, but no one's going to be checking you in or checking you out. That was ridiculous. I mean, that's the city as well that breeds that kind of atmosphere and that feeling.
What else did you dip in? I was going to say dip into, if that's if you can use that expression. But did you watch other sports and? Yeah,
so we tried to immerse ourselves in the Olympic thing, not just doing what we were doing, but going and watching the volleyball, the tennis, some guys went to the diving, because, like going and watching other, because we were sports fans as well, so that was awesome. You get free tickets to go and see all these amazing Olympic events. The best one was probably going to the athletics, when it was that amazing night. It was the 100-meter final night, and Van Niekerk running the 400 as well. I think they were on the same night, weren't they? And that was pretty special. I mean, that's just like once in a lifetime stuff. And at the time, it was, I think that was on maybe the 4th night of our 5 nights that we had post event. I was pretty fatigued at that point, and I remember sitting in the stadium late at night, having not had much sleep for the previous few days, and just feeling exhausted and just thinking, maybe I'll just close my eyes for a minute, and obviously just snapping myself out of that, remembering where I was and the opportunity I had to watch what was probably some of the best sport I'd ever seen.
The only person to go to the 100-meter Olympic final and snooze for the 10 seconds.
Can you imagine? Oh my God.
I mean, you can't live that one down. And did you, I mean, obviously, the Olympic Village, is that as much sort of chaos as everyone says? Do you make contacts and friends, or is it just, it burns brightly and then it's done kind of thing? A bit like Burning Man in many ways, but.
Yeah, that's in a way, but it burns brightly and leaves an imprint on you.
Yeah.
Because I've never experienced an environment like that where there was such an electric atmosphere. And obviously you're not even in a competition arena there, but there's the anticipation and there's the thrill that everyone's there for the highlights of their careers, their lives potentially. And that does permeate the village, and that's incredibly cool to be a part of. And then alongside that, you've just got the pure intrigue of who's around, whether they be famous or just like ridiculous physical specimens, and all the huge scale of physical specimens you've got. It was just baffling. And you've got that every time you walk to breakfast, every time you walk to lunch, you're seeing a different country, a different athlete. And then occasionally you get like a famous one, a famous walks past. And there's a lot of like glances, a lot of looks, and you're somewhere between wanting to look and ask for a photo, but then also trying to play it cool because you're like, they're probably sick of it.
I'm an Olympian too, brother. Did you say to Usain, pass the salt, or was there a moment?
Mate, he didn't hang around in the village. I think he came in for like maybe a day or two just to reassure himself that he was still a superstar, and he was followed around everywhere by 20 athletes, and these are all pro athletes as well, or full-time athletes, all wanting a photo with him or to say hello. I think he got sick of it after about 48 hours. But yeah, there were those moments where you feel a bit uncomfortable, because I mean the two that stand out are probably Andy Murray and Mo Farah, who seem like two very lovely people. And no pretense, but because you've seen them so often on TV and they're superstars, you're in the same kit and you're in the same team. So you're telling yourself, we're on the same level here, but you're not as well. So, and there's the fan in you that wants to just like lose your mind. But those are cool moments. Those are just good. I don't think those memories will ever fade. I mean, talk about it sort of burning out, but those were such strong and powerful emotions at those times that they won't fade in a hurry.
It's very nice to catch up. Any other business? Anything else? Anything else you're needing or looking for? The sponsor, you don't need the sponsorship anymore, so we don't need to kind of drum that.
You've already talked about the WhatsApp groups that you mix in, and you're in some powerful WhatsApp groups. So be sure to drop us in. Now, on a little bit of a serious note, and we talked about it already, but it's just so much what we're trying to do with GB is pushing the game. It's the reason a lot of us are trying to. It's the reason that Chippy, me, and Burnsy do our own Seventh Heaven podcast, to try and just get it out there. And you never know what these things are going to lead to, but the future of the game is still in the balance. So, so if you could just drop that into your power WhatsApp groups that you're on with all the big wigs, and just make sure that things are getting sorted at the top end, that'd be really great.
I will do whatever I can. Most of those powerful WhatsApp groups have got the words "Payno has been asked to leave the group" attached to them. So I will. I'll do that. Tell me more about the pod Seventh Heaven. I've listened to it a couple of times, but where can people find it? How do people get involved? What is? What's the?
Yeah, so you can find it wherever you listen to your podcasts. At Seventh Heaven Pod on Instagram as well. And not only do we push our own nonsense on that, but we also sort of cover what's going on in the world of sevens. So at the moment there are a few sevens tournaments going on. So we'll try and get the news and views for that. And a lot of the podcast is us chatting rubbish to one another as we do. As we like to do, but there's also some good sevens insight in there if you can find it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's myself, Rich de Carpentier, and Joe Burns, and Abby Burton has been joining us recently to do Burt's breakdown and give an insight into the women's game. And not only give an insight into the women's game, but actually add a lot more quality chat to what was otherwise subpar banter between me and Chippy.
All of this sounds remarkably familiar on many levels. Double good luck. It's been really nice to catch up. We will be watching, obviously, with huge interest, and everyone knows what the Olympics will do for sevens and sevens does to the Olympics. So I hope you rock and roll, and very best of luck to you and all of the squad. Keep us posted. Otherwise, good luck in the short term with the mini.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Nice to chat. Have a great week. Thanks, Tom.